Hello everyone, and welcome to the OptiFish Partner Spotlight, a series that brings you closer to the people and innovations shaping the future of sustainable fisheries. I'm Lia Kesopoulou from Reframe Food, and as the Communications Manager for OptiFish, I'm happy to guide you on this journey. In today's episode, we'll explore the challenges and opportunities in monitoring and reporting for artisanal fisheries with Naiara Rodríguez-Ezpeleta from AZTI. Hello Naiara, welcome.
Hello, thank you very much for hosting me.
It's a pleasure to have you with us today and make this interesting discussion. To start, could you tell us more about AZTI's role in the OptiFish project?
Yeah, so AZTI plays a significant role in the project. So we are focusing on improving fisheries monitoring, sustainability and efficiency. So we will do this focusing on three aspects. So first, we will use satellite data to detect anomalies in vessel positions so that we can optimize the resources allocated for control at sea. And then through workshops with local fishers, authorities, officials, and researchers, of course, we will also assess climate change impacts and also the preferences of the fishermen to have scientific observers over other technologies such as cameras and so on. So this will highlight the need for better data for improved management and forecasting. And finally, and this is what we will be discussing today, I believe, as a major task of the project, we will pilot alternative monitoring techniques like self-reporting systems and environmental DNA for artisanal fisheries monitoring, catch monitoring.
Okay, thank you, Naiara. In the Bay of Biscay, artisanal fisheries play a key role in local economies. However, monitoring and reporting remain significant challenges. So what are some of the key obstacles these fisheries face in tracking their catches?
Yeah. So at the moment we have 70 artisanal fishing vessels, but it is true that there are more than that are engaged in traditional fishing. It can be over 200, right? So those are vessels that have more than 12 meters long. And these fisheries are considered data limited. So anything that we can do for better monitoring their catches will be very positive. The challenges are that these fisheries are very diverse in terms of catch composition, so the number of different species they capture is really high. So this makes species identification difficult, right, for the personnel on board. And many times this reporting is done on an aggregated level, so not species by species. And this can be an issue for species of high value if we cannot identify them morphologically to species level. So, of course, monitoring with observers that sometimes have this knowledge to do this taxonomic identification is possible, right? But these vessels are small, so this complicates the logistics, having one more person on board and things like this. So alternative monitoring techniques are very, very useful, could be very useful for improving the reporting in these fisheries.
Okay, so it's clear that traditional monitoring methods like observing have several limitations. With that in mind, what new technologies are emerging to help artisanal fisheries improve sustainability while easing a little bit the burden of data collection?
So one option is the self-reporting systems like tablets, where the skippers enters some data. Another, a bit more sophisticated system could be the electronic monitoring. So this is basically cameras that are placed in the vessels, and then footage is captured, and then these images are interpreted. And then we have genetic methods that are also being explored as an alternative for fish monitoring. So these technologies as a whole, they can allow data collection without the need of having one additional person on board, right? So they can improve the efficiency of data collection, reduce the cost of monitoring, and it is true that they could increase somehow the tasks that are needed to be done by the crew, but we think they are promising and they can be implemented and can result in better monitoring.
Mm-hmm. These sound like promising solutions, but how do these technologies translate into real benefits for artisanal fisheries? Are they already making an impact?
So at the moment, we have 10 vessels that have the cameras installed. So 4 are what we call artisanal fisheries and 6 what we call traditional fisheries. Obviously, the cameras offer, as I said before, an effective way to achieve a broad coverage, but not only for the number of sizes of the species captured, but for potential interactions with endangered, threatened, and protected species as well, right? So we can monitor if these species have been captured or have been affected by the fishing operations, right? So the self-reporting system, that is another alternative, has been installed in 10 vessels. What happens is that there is 2 systems that coexist at the moment. So one is promoted by the government. So it's a bit more difficult to implement this system. But it's true that the system that the government is implementing offers the possibility to enter less data. So it's a little bit less complete monitoring system. And then eDNA, environmental DNA, is something that we are now trying to implement. Is incipient at the moment, but the idea is that we can use this technology as another source of catch monitoring.
Mm-hmm. So one of the technologies is environmental DNA or eDNA, which is your expertise as well. Could you explain how eDNA or better DNA analysis technology enhances the ability to monitor fish in real time, and why is that useful for artisanal fisheries?
Okay, so eDNA or environmental DNA is basically the DNA that is present in the environment. So every single living form has DNA, and it's released into the environment. We are now releasing DNA in this room, right? So if we sample seawater, a few liters, 1, 2, we will get traces of the organisms that live in this seawater mass. Even if this is a whale, a dolphin, or a small fish, there will be scales, tissues, mucus, etc. So we can capture this DNA to infer which organisms live there. In the vessels, it's the same. We could sample water that has been in contact with the catches. We call it blood water. We can sample this water, analyze the DNA, and detect the proportion of species. If there is species of interest, for example, endangered, threatened, and protected species that we want to monitor if it has been captured, and so on, through the sequencing of this DNA. So it's a non-invasive method that can be very sensitive for monitoring, right? Another thing we can do is we can monitor fish health as well, because we could detect DNA from the parasites in this water. So even though we don't see the parasites, apparently the fish is not damaged, we can check if presence of these parasites is in the water samples, which means that the parasite would be there as well, right? So very promising.
Yes, indeed, that's very promising, being able to identify species and assess fish health without or human observation, direct observation. As part of OptiFish, what types of data are being collected to evaluate the effectiveness of all these new technologies?
So in our case, what we will try to do is to combine the information we get from 3 different data sources, so the observers on board, the self-reporting system, and the environmental DNA. We will also add the cameras in some cases if we have this information. So the idea would be to see if we get coherent, complementary information from the different methodologies and so on. And also because we are part of OptiFish and there are other partners doing similar work in other fisheries that are very different from ours, we will also be able to compare methodologically what works better, maybe in what type of fishery and so on. So that could be very interesting, also the comparison between methods, but also within method in different fisheries.
So collecting accurate data is essential, as we understand, for better fisheries management. How can these technologies support local small-scale fishers in making more informed decisions?
So everything that involves having more and better data will imply better decisions, right? Because we will have more information and we will have a better evidence, right, to make the decision. So in that case, the impact is very positive. In the case of the fisheries, the artisanal fisheries, obviously the interaction with the non-target species is very important to monitor. So marine mammals and other ETPs, species. Then also the fishermen will be able to get more detailed information on their operations. So they will be able to adjust their operations for an improved profitability and sustainability. So they will get more information. And obviously we will also help the regional and national management authorities by providing them tools to do a better monitoring and then be able to apply the regulations in a better way.
Thank you. Given the limited resources of artisanal fishers, implementing new technologies can be very challenging. How can electronic monitoring cameras and genetic tools be adapted to be both practical and cost-effective for small-scale fisheries?
Okay, so obviously as scientists, we need to make sure the installation and the use of these alternative monitoring technologies is as logistically easy as possible, so feasible as possible, so that we can promote their use. Most times, the use of these new methodologies is not mandatory. So it's really up to the fishermen to use them. But through conversations with them, we have also found that they are very keen into introducing these new technologies, because it's also good for them, because as I said before, this will imply better data, and it will also imply a long-term sustainability of their resources and those of their business, right? Mm-hmm. So it's challenging, but we think that there is a positive reaction to it. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
So fishers are open to dialogue and to accepting these new technologies, right?
In most cases, yes, but obviously we need to make sure that the installation of these new technologies is not harm to their operations, right? So it doesn't imply a higher cost. These are fisheries that they don't have a high profit. So anything that can affect this margin can be negative. So we need to make sure that it's okay, they are happy to install them and they're happy to cooperate, but we need to make sure that we make it as easy as possible for them as well, right?
Yes, I see, you're right. So Naiara, thank you very much for being here with us today and for sharing your insights. It's been a pleasure learning more about AZTI's role in OptiFish and the future, of course, of artisanal fisheries.
Thank you very much to you.
To our audience, thank you for tuning in to this episode of the OptiFish Partner Spotlight. If you would like to learn more about OptiFish, visit our website, sign up for a newsletter, and follow us on social media for regular updates on our journey. See you in the next episode.